I never imagined that the same arms that once comforted me in childhood would one day wrap around my deepest grief and use it as a weapon to break me. My name is Alina, and for most of my life, I truly believed family was the safest harbor in any storm. I grew up in a charming two-story house on the edge of a quiet neighborhood, with a big oak tree in the backyard, whose branches I climbed as a little girl. My father was a retired high school teacher, a man of few words but steady presence, who believed in morning pancakes and evening walks. My mother filled our home with the smell of fresh-baked bread, soft lullabies, and endless stories. My older brother Marcus was the golden child, athletic, charming, the one who could light up any room and make our parents beam with pride. I was the quiet, responsible daughter, the one who helped set the table, remembered everyone's birthdays, and never wanted to cause waves. When Marcus married Lisa and they welcomed my niece Sophia into the world, our family felt truly complete for the first time. Sophia arrived with a head full of dark curls and the most sparkling hazel eyes. From the moment the nurse placed her tiny, warm body in my arms in that bright hospital room, I fell completely in love. She quickly became Auntie Elena's girl. Every weekend she would run to me with sticky hands and demand I braid her hair or read her favorite princess stories. She loved the part where the princess could feel the tiny pea under 20 mattresses, just like when I can't sleep. Auntie. She would giggle, her little voice filling the room with pure joy. Thanksgiving was always her favorite holiday. The whole house would fill with the rich aroma of roasted turkey, basted with herbs, sweet potatoes caramelizing in the oven, cinnamon-spiced pies cooling on the windowsill, and the sharp tang of homemade cranberry sauce. Sophia would drag her small pink stepstool into the kitchen, helping me roll out dough while flour dusted her nose like fresh snow. She'd carefully place the forks the wrong way on the children's table and laugh until her belly hurt. My mother would hum old hymns at the sink. My father would carve the turkey with the same silver knife he'd used for decades. Marcus would carry Sophia on his shoulders to hang decorations. In those golden moments, surrounded by laughter and love, I believed nothing could ever tear us apart. But life has a way of shattering even the strongest illusions. One rainy October night 10 years ago, when Sophia was just 6 years old, everything changed in a single heartbreaking moment. A drunk driver ignored a red light. One phone call from my mother, her voice barely recognizable through sobs, brought me rushing through the storm to the hospital. The waiting room smelled of cold, antiseptic, and quiet fear. The plastic chairs felt icy against my skin. When the doctor finally emerged, his face already carrying the weight of unbearable news, my knees gave way. Sophia was gone. The days that followed were a blur of unimaginable pain. The tiny white casket covered in soft pink roses, her favorite color. The funeral, where grown adults wept like children. I stepped up as the one who held everyone together. I planned every detail, cooked meals that no one could eat, and sat on the floor with my mother at 3 a.m., while she clutched Sophia's favorite stuffed bunny and whispered through tears, "Why her? She was only 6. So innocent. I rubbed her back and said the only thing I could. "I'm here, Mom. We'll carry her memory together. We have to stay strong for each other." I truly thought our shared grief had bonded us even tighter. But what I didn't know back then was that grief can slowly twist into something darker, something colder. It can turn love into control. And in our family, it eventually became a weapon aimed directly at me. The guilt trips started small, almost unnoticed at first. A missed weekend visit because of work. "Sophia would have been so sad you weren't here." Alina. My decision to take a better job opportunity 2 hours away. "After everything we lost with Sophia, how can you put yourself first?" Each comment landed like a quiet stone in my chest. I would swallow the hurt, convince myself they were still healing, and stay closer than I wanted to. Nights I lay awake in my old childhood bedroom, the same room where Sophia and I once stuck glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling together, staring at those fading stars and wondering if I really was being selfish. Years passed, and the comments grew heavier. Every holiday, every family gathering, somehow circled back to her. Remember how Sophia used to beg you to stay for one more story? My mother would say, her voice trembling, just enough to make me feel like the worst person alive. I started doubting my own heart. Was I failing the memory of that sweet little girl by trying to build a life of my own? The weight of that question slowly began to crush me. Then, 3 years ago, my grandfather passed away. He had always been my quiet anchor. The one who took me fishing at dawn when I was 10, and whispered, "You've got real fire in you, kiddo. Don't ever let anyone put it out." His estate was substantial. The family home, rental properties, investments, and savings that added up to millions. In his carefully written will, he left clear instructions. A generous portion was to fund a scholarship in Sophia's name for children who lost a parent too soon. The rest was to be divided with fairness and transparency among his children and grandchildren. He even included a personal note to me. "Alina, you've always been the steady light. Use this to build something beautiful." 1 week after the funeral, my parents called a family meeting in the living room, the same room where Sophia once built blanket forts and laughed until she couldn't breathe. Mom's eyes were already red with tears. Dad slid a stack of papers across the coffee table. With trembling voices, they explained that, after everything we've suffered losing our granddaughter, the money should help heal what remained of the family. Marcus had lost a daughter, they said. He carried unimaginable pain. I was stable and didn't need as much. They asked me to sign documents for the sake of unity and what Sophia would have wanted. Something in the way they avoided my eyes, the way Marcus stared silently at the floor, felt deeply wrong. I smiled the way I had learned to do so well, said I needed time to read everything carefully, and left with the papers in my bag. That night, alone in my apartment, doubt turned into suspicion. I couldn't shake the feeling that Sophia's name was being used as currency. So, I did what I never thought I would have to do with my own blood. I hired a discreet estate lawyer and requested every single financial record. What unfolded over the following months completely shattered me. The manipulation had begun subtly right after Sophia's funeral, when grief was raw. My parents had used emotional pressure on grieving relatives, for the family's healing after losing Sophia, to redirect small amounts. Over time, it grew bolder. Emails I was never meant to see revealed discussions about how to handle Alina, because I was too independent, and wouldn't understand the family's needs. Bank statements painted a horrifying picture. Nearly $4.6 million quietly redirected over the years. Money meant for Sophia's scholarship had disappeared into home renovations, a new car for Marcus, and emotional support expenses. They had used her innocent name in letters to other relatives to justify taking larger shares. Every guilt trip I had swallowed for a decade had been strategic. Every late-night call, reminding me how I was failing her memory, had been part of a plan to isolate me and secure the inheritance for themselves. I sat in my car outside the lawyer's office with documents scattered across the passenger seat and sobbed until I had nothing left. These were the same hands that once pushed me on the backyard swing while I squealed with delight. The same voices that once sang me lullabies. Now they had spent 10 years hiding behind a 6-year-old girl's tragedy to steal my future and paint me as the ungrateful daughter. The betrayal cut so deep it felt physical. For weeks I felt completely lost, broken in ways I didn't know were possible. I questioned every happy memory. I distanced myself while still answering their calls with a forced smile. But in the middle of that suffocating darkness, something inside me began to shift. The endless tears slowly dried. The crushing guilt hardened into quiet clarity, and then into steel resolve. I refused to let them rewrite history or use Sophia's pure memory as a tool any longer. I spent the next several months in secret, meticulously organizing every receipt, every time-stamped transfer, every email chain, and every discrepancy. I created a comprehensive black folder with expert analysis for $0.6 million in undeniable proof. I kept it hidden like a silent promise to myself. I continued smiling during family conversations, and let them believe I was still the same compliant, guilt-tridden daughter. But inside, I was preparing for the day I would finally lay the truth on the table. That day arrived on Thanksgiving evening. The air outside was crisp, leaves crunching under my tires, as I drove the familiar route to my childhood home. I wore a simple navy dress, my hair pulled back softly the way Sophia once tried to copy during dress-up games. In my bag rested the black folder that held everything. The house smelled exactly as it always did on this day. Sage and butter from the stuffing, cinnamon from the pies, wood smoke from the fireplace. The long oak table was set with the same faded floral plates, and the children's tablecloth, still bearing Sophia's little pink handprints in the corner. My parents greeted me with tight hugs, and the usual warm words. "So good to have you home after everything we've been through." Marcus was there with his new girlfriend, looking tense. We sat down to eat. Conversation started politely. The weather, work, gentle memories of better times. Then, as it always did, the tone shifted. My mother sighed deeply over her plate and said, "Family is about sacrifice, especially after losing Sophia. Some of us carry heavier burdens. We have to support each other, even if it means putting our own dreams aside." I set my fork down gently. My heart pounded against my ribs, but my voice came out calm and steady. The voice of someone who had carried this truth for too long. "I've been thinking about sacrifice a lot lately," I said softly. "About Sophia. About what real love and real grief actually look like." The room grew still. Even the crackling fireplace seemed too quiet. I reached for the folder and began placing the documents on the table one by one. Highlighted bank statements, printed emails, transfer records, the original will beside the altered versions. The numbers glowed under the warm chandelier light, $4.6 million. I loved Sophia with every single piece of my heart. I continued, my eyes meeting each of theirs. I can still feel her sticky fingers in mine when we baked cookies together. I still hear her whispering, "I love you, Auntie," before falling asleep on my shoulder. Her death broke something in all of us that may never fully heal. But taking her innocent memory, her name, her short, bright life, and using it to manipulate documents, to redirect money Grandpa clearly intended for her scholarship, to guilt me into disappearing from this family. That isn't grief. That isn't love. That is betrayal. My mother's face drained of color. She clutched her napkin as if it could protect her. My father's hand froze midair, the carving knife still in his grip. Marcus pushed his chair back slightly, eyes wide with shock and something like fear. I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't need to. The paper trail sat between the mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce, like an uninvited guest that refused to leave. I walked them through the timeline quietly, the small redirects right after the funeral when grief was freshest, the larger ones that grew bolder over the years, the emails where they planned how to handle me. Sophia deserves better than to have her name turned into a tool for greed, I said softly at the end. And so do I. The silence that followed was heavier than any words could ever be. My mother began to cry, real, broken sobs this time. My father tried to protest, but the evidence was undeniable. Marcus whispered something I couldn't quite hear. But we all knew the truth had finally surfaced. I didn't stay long after that. I simply gathered the documents, wished them a quiet good night, and walked out into the cool night air. For the first time in 10 years, I felt like I could breathe deeply again. In the weeks and months that followed, everything shifted. Through legal channels, the misused funds began to be corrected. A significant portion finally flowed into Sophia's scholarship fund exactly as my grandfather had intended. The quiet control my family had held for so long slowly slipped away. Relationships changed forever, but the lies no longer owned me. Walking away from that house that night, with the cold air on my face and the stars above, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. A quiet, powerful peace. Sophia's memory no longer belongs to manipulation. It belongs to the pure joy she brought. The flower on her nose, the silly dances in the kitchen. The way she believed princesses could feel even the smallest discomfort under layers of comfort. If this long and painful journey taught me one lasting truth, it is this: family is not defined only by blood. Real family protects your heart rather than sharpening your wounds into weapons. Grief is sacred ground, never allow anyone to build chains upon it. When the people who are supposed to love you most try to bury you beneath the weight of shared pain, you have every right to stand tall, speak your truth clearly, and choose yourself with love and courage. Because on the other side of the deepest betrayal, when you finally refuse to be erased or diminished, something beautiful and healing begins. You don't just survive the storm. You emerge stronger, clearer, and finally, free. I'm Alina. I faced the darkest weapon my own family could forge against me, using the memory of my precious niece. And today, with my head held high and my heart gently mending, I am finally, completely free.